Alright guys, for this particular shading lesson, we're going to be using this image, and I chose this image just because the lighting is really nice. We're going to be focusing on the cylinder, the cube, and the cone, and if you want to draw this little cube in the front, you can. Our goal here is to learn how to use the pencils correctly to shade, to eliminate outline, and to create the illusion of light and shadow on a 2D surface. So we're creating three-dimensional form on a two-dimensional surface, and that's our goal. So this is our beginning practice. We will move on to more advanced versions of this type of shading. Keep your value scale handy from last time. You can use this as a reference point. So let's go ahead and begin, and how I would do this is I'm going to take a note card and I'm just going to draw a box in my sketchbook, and if you would like to, you can turn your sketchbook to the side and just kind of orient myself into a space that I want to use, and I'm going to begin with a regular pencil. So, you know, we're not using an X grid, we're not trying to draw this as a still life. This is a shading exercise. So if your form's placement is slightly off, what I'm focused on here is being able to shade to eliminate outline and capturing form with light and shadow. Okay, so I will be using this picture as a reference. I'd like for you to be able to see my drawing the most, but just know that I have this picture close by. So I'm going to begin with a regular pencil drawing the contour. So one thing you could look at here first is the horizon line, just to kind of orient you a little bit. And it's not quite halfway if I were to look at, you know, the background, the length of the background. So it's just, you know, about 1/4 of an inch off. So you can go slightly lower than halfway and create a horizon. Okay, very, very lightly. So don't forget that when you're creating a cone, it's an elliptical object, and I'm going to draw through the sphere because we're not focusing on sphere for this particular assignment. And remember that when you draw a cone, you want to do the smiley face base and then a dot straight up from the center. So what you could do is you could line this up and find that center point and draw your sides. Okay, so my cylinder is sitting on top of this cube. So I'm going to, you know, look for my approximate vanishing points. And you can draw this from the computer screen. I'm just being particular about the vanishing points because I'm trying to make it as accurate as possible for you. I'm not going to focus on making it super large. I might have to use a guess and check method with this because I'm not 100% sure about it yet. Okay, so remember when you're drawing a cube, your vertical edge, you need to draw that first. Slide it over. We can't quite see where this is at. These objects are very close together. There was many photos that I went through that I wanted to use, and I finally settled on this one. So in the actual image, there is a sphere that is right here. But again, I said we're not focusing on the sphere. If you want to put it in there, that's fine. So remember, your sides must be parallel. You guys should be pros at drawing cubes. If you are by any chance struggling with the cube, you will need to refer back to the previous assignment. Parallels will always dictate where things go. All right, so in the picture we have a cylinder sitting on top of this cube. That looks a little wide. I am drawing this very quickly. It's not going to be 100% accurate like the photo, but like I said earlier, we are focusing on creating form. Okay, just remember that you guys are not computers. It's not always going to be mathematically perfect. Okay, so I'm pretty satisfied with this little sketch that I've whipped up really fast. So I want you to do the same thing. And now I'm going to take my shading pencil and I'm going to be observing the values that are in the image. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to create this gradient that goes across, and then we have a cast shadow right here. And know that the cast shadow, if you notice, is darker than the actual shadow on the object. So this could be like an 8 and a 9, and then this is a 10. Okay, same with where an object touches a surface. Wherever objects touch surfaces is always going to be the darkest part of your image. If you would like to create the edge of this object by shading the background to eliminate this outline, then go ahead and do so, and I'm going to show you in a little bit. So one thing that I want to mention about getting nice edges and why I started off shading to the side is just kind of defining this line really fast so that I don't go outside of it. Oops, did I go outside of it? If you do go outside of it, then you can take your piece of paper or note card and an eraser. Oops, I slipped a little bit. And straighten it back up, okay? So that's one thing that you can do. You can also turn the picture completely the other way around to where the lead doesn't poke underneath the paper like I did a second ago. Okay. So you don't want to push very hard right here. It is dark, but there's a little bit of light hitting that side. It's hard to see in the image on the computer, but it's there. It's like a little reflective light, so I'm not going to quite make that a 9 going across there. There's just a tiny bit of light hitting that. You can always put some of your 4s and 5s down first and go darker afterwards. And one thing I do want you guys to understand is that the highlights are not always going to be bright like the white of the paper. The white of the paper is pretty bleached and pretty light, especially if you're shading a face. The highlights will be just those little shiny glistens where moisture is, but most highlights are not the white of the paper. Okay, so this will be my 10. Remember, no scribble shading. So one thing I'm noticing at the top, and this is kind of a tricky spot for cones, is notice that triangular highlight shape that goes all the way to the tip. So you can take your note card, and to find that edge, I'm going to use the side of the pencil. Your background does not have to be jet black like it is in the image. We're just defining that edge right there. So I do that I have that light reflecting onto the side here. So let's see what kind of contrast we can create. I'm going to turn my picture around where it's more comfortable to shade. Okay, so there's a little bit of a contrast that I want to kind of cover up a little bit. You can use your kneaded eraser to put reflective highlights back in. Okay, so there's a little bit more work I want to do to my cone. I'm going to go ahead and move over to the cylinder for a second, and then I'm going to come back to the cone. Okay, so cylinder is dark on the edge. It's hard to see in the image, but there is a contrast between the background and the cylinder. So I'm going to go ahead and create my kind of 8 and 9 value over here. And go ahead and line up my note card. So shading in a circular motion creates a nice smooth surface. I am going a bit fast. I don't want you guys rushing like I am. I'm trying to keep the video at a lowest amount of time as possible. Okay, so defined my edge right there. The background is again very dark. The base of this cube is where the cylinder's sitting. So we want to establish where it's sitting. You can do this in any order that you like. It does not have to be done in the exact order of the way I've done it. So in this particular image, you cannot see this back part of the cube, and that's okay. It is a little bit annoying, but we want to recognize that the shadow comes across as a diagonal from the cone that's sitting next to it. And then the highlight in the front is very, very light, like your 2 value. I'm gonna check and make sure these are parallel. This looks a little bit weird. Yeah, this is a little bit off. Do you see how tiny that looks back there? We could shorten our cube quite a bit. this back line should come off just a little bit, but I'll fix that later. Okay, so looking at this, back into the front face, we wanted to create this contrast here on the left. I need to move my surface. There we go. There's something underneath my... Be careful what's underneath your paper. There is a little bit of a reflective light right there. Okay, so the majority of this is complete. It's not 100% complete. So I want you to work on it, and if you can accomplish elimination of outline, smooth, gradual value transitions, then you've reached your goal. If you've created the illusion of form, then you've reached the goal. As with anything, the more you work on it, the better it's going to look. So if you've come this far, then that's great. Go ahead and continue. Just for the sake of not having a really long video, this is already almost 30 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and stop, but I do want you to know that I went very, very quickly through this exercise, and I do not want you guys to rush. Getting these skills down is crucial for the remainder of the course. Don't forget to put your name on it and upload to Schoology.